Level up with the new AAA Commanders MVP membership. Get all the benefits of AAA plus exclusive experiences, discounts, and tickets. Already a AAA member? Upgrade for free or join today at AAA.com/Commanders. Hello and welcome to another live stream edition of the John Keim Report. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Don't forget, subscribe, like if you're watching on YouTube, do all that good stuff. You can find us on Empire Media. You can go listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. All that good stuff. And as you can see, I'm joined by Bram Weinstein, the voice of the Commanders. And, I was talking to Bram just now, almost had a first magical finish for you this year, Bram. So got to be a little bit weird. Although you did say you got the Trey Burks one at least.
Catch of the year in the NFL.
Yeah.
That was pretty amazing. And considering the way the season has gone, I'll take it. I'll take it. That was a good night. I know there's no silver linings, but it felt like there were some silver linings the other night.
Well, we can get to that too. And I want to get into Dan Quinn as the coordinator, young guys versus some of the vets as far as playing it, and Jaden Daniels, et cetera. But I don't know that there's really anything more to talk about with Jaden. He's either going to come back this week or not. But silver linings for you were what were two or three that you plucked away from that game?
Well, just number one, their record is what it is. And, we want to see that the locker room has stayed together and they're going to stay in the fight and the brotherhood is there. And, honestly, I don't know what your take was on the locker room, but it was down because they lost, but it was more upbeat because of the way I think things went down. And so I was kind of appreciative of that. They had some great moments. They stayed in it. They came back. They never laid down for that team, came back multiple times. I think that was a really good sign. The offensive line, which I think we could probably spend a lot of time talking about, is really starting to come together now. And I think that's a positive. I was hoping it would be a strength of this team, and maybe we'll see it be that way for the, final third of the season. And the defense, as Dan Quinn said a couple weeks ago, it needed to be level set, and it's level set. And there actually were a couple of adjustments that really stood out to me in some key moments where they made some big plays. They're missing too many people, and they don't have enough prominent playmakers, I think, to flip a switch and become really good, but they're at least competitive and effective. They're not getting run over, and they're not a sieve. And I think that's all very positive that's coming out of this.
I think you bring up a good point about the locker room, because it almost felt like nobody is happy with losing. You start right there, but when some of those other games, it was what the hell is going on? Yeah. This game was at least I think they felt like maybe they're getting back to who they were and who they thought they would be. I think we're getting closer to that, which is why I think it was obviously after any loss, they're going to be down, but I think there was more upbeat talk about it because of how bad it had been. But you offensively, you moved the ball on arguably the best defense you faced this year statistically, right?
Yep.
And you went toe to toe with them, and if one deflected pass from winning the game, and the defense is not great right now. I don't know that they have the personnel to be great right now, but they are playing, but they're playing better. And I think that's a good place for them to start. So I think it almost felt down about a loss, but starting to see more of who they felt they could be.
Yeah. Earlier in the season, they weren't stopping anybody or anything, they weren't taking anything away. And, the last couple of weeks, and granted, these two offenses, Miami and Denver, are not scoring or moving the ball like Detroit's or Seattle's for that matter, or Dallas's or Kansas City's. So they are a different opponent for sure. And I want to take that, for what it's worth. But I'll take Atlanta, I think, is a very good example of earlier in the season when Bijan had a huge day, London had a season high career day, Pitts had a huge day, Penix had a huge day, and the week before Atlanta lost 30-0, right? And Penix wasn't seeing it. And I was we did the booth review podcast with London and Logan on Monday, and Logan was kind of talking about, no offense to Bo Nix or Tua, but the last couple of weeks, but they are a tier quarterback right now that is not Mahomes, not Allen, like no offense to them. And so you need to like kind of take advantage of them, especially, in Bo Nix's case where he's very young. And I pointed back to Penix and I'm like, here's the biggest difference here. Like Penix is of that caliber too. He hasn't ascended up to be this huge star yet. And yet on that day, he ripped them apart. And I felt like that was more about the Commanders than it really was about the Falcons, because everybody ate, everybody got anything they wanted.
Right.
And the last couple of weeks, it hasn't been that way. There have been very few big plays down the field. They're forcing checkdowns. They're giving up a lot of yardage. But I think that has to do with what goes back to what you said, which is I don't think they have the personnel to flip games upside down. So they're going to have to manage it, but they're managing it a lot better. And there were a couple of moments late, if you want to talk about them, that I thought really stood out with the adjustments and the situational awareness that really stuck out to me about what the difference is with the defense right now as it was, 5-6 weeks ago.
Yeah. And to your point, Denver averaged 7.1 yards per pass attempt. That's like the third lowest this year. And so they threw for a lot of yards, but I think it was because they had a lot of attempts. So I think that was part of it. They did a better job against run. This is one of the things, and this is why I want to bring up Dan Quinn is he in a better position to be, like, if he wants to be the defensive play caller next year, is he in a better position to do that than he was going into this a whole, whether year or his tenure here? And I would say yes, from the well, let me get back to one thing. They're playing more sound for whatever reason, whatever the reason is. Like when the one thing I would notice with the run defense against Denver, again, 3.8 per carry, one of their better showings against the run, only 2 carries for 10 plus yards. They had 12 in the previous 2 games of those kind of carries. So better fit. But what you're seeing is better run gap fits. Like the Sunday was, I'd have to go back and look at some of the earlier games, but there was a really good game for fitting the run. And some of that could be, Will Harris is back. That's part of it. I also think Bram so the big plays on the field, less man coverage. Now, some of that could be no Amos, no Lattimore, your press man guys, but you're playing more zone. Playing more zone has allowed them to stay with more 3 linebacker sets. So more Jordan McGee. And that, I think, has helped against the run as well. Like, I really like watching McGee, how he handles himself out there against the run and where he takes on blockers, et cetera. So I think that all adds up. And the reason why I think that for Quinn, because he said Monday, like, he could stick with this. I think part of that to me is if he wanted to, you'd be going into year 3 year program. These coaches know what to expect from you and what you expect from them and from others. You have 2 former head coaches as of right now on your offensive staff in Lynn and Kingsbury that should, if Quinn wants to stick with the D, that should allow him to do so, knowing that he's got these guys over here he can trust. He doesn't have to be in all these meeting rooms. He can go do that because, as he always likes to say, what's somebody's superpower? His is calling plays. So maybe he can maybe he needs to get down and get in that space and stick there.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I think that's probably a choice he will make in the offseason. I mean, like, let's get through the season. Does he want to elevate someone else to be the play caller again? He certainly, if he does do that, he's not going to want to have a repeat of this situation where if things don't go particularly well, that he has to save the day again as the play caller for them. So that'll be an interesting, I think also, I remember towards the end of, Ron's tenure where when he picked up play calling again and he got involved because they fired Jack Del Rio, and he kind of talked about how it kind of reinvigorated him a little bit because as the head coach, sometimes you lose a little bit of the fun of it. And maybe this is getting the juices going for Quinn a little bit. Not that it seems to take much to do that with him, but maybe it is a little bit. But it is a lot. It's a lot of responsibility to be the defensive coordinator and the head coach of the team. So I'll see. We'll take the way I look at it, this is, let's get through the season. There's a lot of things. Let's get through the season. Right, and then we'll take his pulse on a lot of this stuff. Like last week, and I thought this might be the case over the last couple of weeks. By necessity, Mike Sanders still is playing on the outside again because of injuries. You know what? He might be better out there. And Quinn kind of just acknowledged that that's a possibility too. So I've described what's happened to this point as things, there are going to be a lot of reflections after this season. And there's a lot of reasons why their record is what it is. The injuries are part of it. There's a lot of decisions and things that happened that added up to everything kind of went the wrong way. And so I think they're going to reflect on a lot of it. And, we'll see what the changes are that come out of it. But, I think at this point, because they're playing a little bit better, because they're starting to play the style he likes, he probably feels invigorated by that. This guy lives off energy. I do too. And he really lives off energy. And they got the right energy going again right now. And so that could be part of this. Let's see how he feels about it in January, February, when the daunting task of having both jobs sits in front of him again.
Well, I was still surprised that even after just 2 weeks that he was like, yeah, I'd consider it. I think that to me was like, goes back to what you're saying, that maybe he felt that energetic juice right away, because I would have thought that maybe like, well, right now it's like, I'm just worried about getting through the season and addressing it then. But the fact that he said it tells me that it's kind of maybe like, I don't know about energizing, because you're right. Like, he doesn't need any sort of energetic jolt. Like the dude, he's got some energy, but maybe it's just like, you get your juices flowing a little bit. And the thing that he has done very, very well in his career is, when he was a coordinator, is have really good defenses. So it makes sense. So, but I think it would be I'm curious to see what happens again. Like, maybe after 5 more weeks, maybe he feels more worn down, and maybe another area kind of falls by the wayside that he wants to be involved in. But man, if you get that offense back together, and if you have that offensive staff back, and I wonder if that would be part of it. Like, if Kingsbury stays, would he be more apt to stick with the defense? That's possibly part of it as well. So, I think there's a lot of things to consider, but I do, and you're right, I think you have to always contextualize everything with this and say, listen, the quarterbacks you're playing are not as good as. However, they do look better. They do look more disciplined. Yes. And like, you can't ignore that. Like, you can't, like, the one part is true and so is the other part. So, and it's not, but it's also not like, I mean, they played better situational football at third downs, not so much the other night. But it just, they did
on one that really stood out to me, John. Actually, there was like one that really, really, really stood out to me. And I'll just point it out real quick now. It was the one, Cortland Sutton is by far the most targeted wide receiver that Denver has on third downs, period. And go watch the play where they had the traffic around him. Bobby Wagner makes a signal to Jacob Martin, who makes a signal. You see it in real time. There's an adjustment to it. And then Nix throws the ball into a crowd of white jerseys with Sutton in the middle of it. Incomplete. They get the ball back. This was just a small sign of the situational awareness has just improved a little bit here. It's the same people that are running out onto the field. They're just having some better results. And I do believe that comes down to experience and feel. And Quinn just has a tremendous amount of experience with the feel of the game. And, he is a very detail-oriented coach. And it's paid off a little bit over the last couple of weeks. And I don't know. I really feel like, just knowing him as much as I know him a year and a half in now, he really feeds off energy. Like, he wants to see the positive energy. And I think what he's seeing right now is the positive energy. And I think that's fueling him in some ways, and probably why he's thinking about, well, if I can get them to play this way, isn't that the goal? So he'll do whatever it takes to get the results.
Right. And I do think a lot of this is during the week, because what you're seeing with the run fits, that's more about throughout the week discipline and game plan and what your rules are for that week, to me, than it is just about like, calling it the right time at the right play, because guys are in the right spots. Like, you weren't always seeing that. So you may have the same defensive call, but what they've done too is with certain looks in the past, and this is what he explained to me a couple weeks ago when we were in Spain. He said, like, in the past, there may be a particular look, and in that particular look, you may have 2 choices to make. Well, then they basically said there's one choice now. So the goal was to get them to play faster, and I do believe they are, especially against the run. And they're going to give up stuff because, again, sometimes you're just not better than what they have. But like, I also thought with Will Harris out there were a couple of times where he came up and made a tackle, and he came up aggressively. And even the first play of the game, it's an 11-yard run, but in the past, like, Quan Martin has had some issues there. So does he get by him? But he closed the gap quick. So yes, it was a good run, but they held him, which is his job, to an 11-yard gain, which is, again, I don't want to make this like the best 11-yard defend and run in history or anything like that. It was just an example of having a guy who can help you. But I agree. I think there's also a feel to it. There's a feel as an offensive play caller too. And I think, again, playing zone, you can be a little bit more disciplined with it. So there's a lot to go there. And I do want to go to, you had the comment up here from.
Yeah, I wanted to bring
Trader.
up this comment too, that they really need to play their younger players and
Why don't you
see
start?
who has a future with them. All right, two things on this, and then I'll get your thoughts on this. One, who are you talking about that isn't playing right now? Which player are you talking about that isn't playing right now that's the young player? Who are they holding back? And two, are you also saying Jaden Daniels should play? Because I hear a lot of people say he shouldn't, and he's a younger player who isn't playing right now. So you can't have that both ways. And one, every time I hear people say they should play younger players, I go, on the roster, who are you referring to that isn't actually playing right now?
That would be exactly my thought. And there's a couple of things with it too. And Quinn, I talked about this on my Second Thoughts podcast that was out this morning, but I'll repeat it now. But he talked about like playing the young guys and, trying to basically threading that needle between trying to win and then trying to develop. But they also talked about maintaining and standards and winning habits. So to me, Bram, you don't play a young guy just because they're young. You play a young guy because they warrant playing time, right?
100%.
So, right, because if you play say, okay, I want to see player X. Well, if they think player X is kind of not handling himself well in meetings and not doing the extra work he needs to, why would you reward that with playtime? You don't, because that's how you lower your standards. And if you're telling all these other players who are then playing all year for you, hey, these are our standards, but I'm going to relax them now just because we're out of the playoffs, I'd say BS, man. I'm not part of that. So I'm not, as Dan Quinn, I'm not down with that. I'm not in that space, Bram. So,
neither am I. I'm not down with it either. I also in this sport, I'm not into tanking, and there is no, one, we have a quarterback. So what in the world would they be, even if you had an argument for it, what in the world would you be tanking for? Which player do you think they have to get at pick 4 instead of pick 7? Like, I don't even know what you're talking about. And two, it's just not in my constitution either. I have more inclined to go, I want to see this team as healthy as it possibly can be. Now that it's starting to get some of their stars back and the offensive line is galvanizing, I actually really, really, really want to see Jaden come back and see what this offense can look like. Can we get a glimpse of what we thought the offense could be in the spring and the summer as we head into next year? And I'm with you on the winning habits thing. There is no reason to go, oh, forget it. 5 games left. Let's not try. That makes no sense to me. They're all about, they preach competition here. You will earn your job. You cannot just abandon that in the middle of the season because the record is bad. Right. Nobody's getting fired. Nobody's going anywhere. We're going to chalk this up to a really bad season, and we can go through in the offseason all the reasons why it went wrong. But I believe it's important to stay in the fight, play hard, keep the brotherhood going, play like they did the last couple of weeks. They'll get different results, maybe even this week. And I think that's important. I actually think winning, securing the winning habits, I just appreciate that.
So, and to this point too, like, look at how many like really consistent playoff teams, how often do they draft in the top 10? Not often. Like New England turned their season around, not because they drafted Will Campbell as a tackle, but because they got the right coach and they have the right quarterback. That's why they turned it around.
They also spent more money in free agency than anybody else too.
Right. It wasn't about the draft pick. The Giants are a perennial top 10 draft team. The New York Jets, the Cleveland Browns, perennial, Tennessee, always in the top 10. Why aren't they good? It's not about so there's so much more than just like, oh my God, they have the 6th pick. They're going to be awesome next year. It's not about that. And I know more option for trade partner teams trade back in every spot in the first round.
That's right.
So, so it's
I agree with that sentiment of it, but but I will also say this, if you have the number 1 pick, because that'll be a quarterback to whoever really needs a quarterback and somebody will do it. But there's no guarantee that happens. There's no guarantee of that. So I just don't, I think we have too much season left. I think they have too much to prove to themselves and to everybody else, and to reassure the building that we're on the right track here. We just had a lot of stuff go really, really, really wrong, and we need to feel good about ourselves heading into next year. And that's why I think you keep playing hard, you keep playing the guys who earn the playing time, and you try to win as many games as possible down the stretch.
Right. And here's the thing, a couple of years ago, they got the number 2 pick. They got it right with Jaden Daniels. the guys that need to come through are the second and third round picks. So, in other words, like they're lower picks, like, but if you hit those, you can really make your draft class. So I don't know. The draft is never a guarantee. And I started looking through it. I'm going to do this at one time and like go through like how many teams are picking the top 10 every year. Again, the Giants built an offensive line with top 10 picks and they stunk, and they had Abdul Carter has not been good this year for them. So it's not a guarantee of anything. I get like the trading back, but that also depends. You can have the 12th pick and trade back. You can have the 10th pick. You have the 15th pick. So it doesn't have to be a top 10 pick. It doesn't guarantee anything because, but here's the other thing too. When I talk, Bram, also, when I'm thinking about when I think about them finishing strong, doesn't mean like, I think, go, win every game. And that's the greatest thing. I think it'll be good for them, but I get like, if you win a couple games, but you look competitive in every game, you look like you did the other night, you can say, okay, they were right there. They're just undermanned, but they finished strong. Like you could be 2-4 and have a strong finish. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think it's just about like wins and losses. It's about how you look, how you play, because if you go 3-14 and that satisfies all the fans with the draft picks, baby, you got way bigger problems that a number 5 pick is going to be able to solve.
Listen, the team they're playing this week picked JJ McCarthy very high. Okay. And you know who else also really liked him? The Commanders really liked him. And had they were not picking number 2, I'm not sure what they would have done. If they were picking 3 or 4, I'm not sure what they would have done, assuming Caleb and Jaden were gone and off the board. I'm not sure. I think they would have taken Drake May, but I don't really know because I knew they really liked him. Right now, how's Minnesota feeling about that? I don't know. So there's no guarantee of any of this. And then, one other real quick comment on the young players.
Right. I'm glad he brought this up back.
He was thinking of, Benson and McGee for young players to play. 1, they are both playing. 2, yes, could McGee play a little bit more? Okay, fine. But how much more are we talking about here? And I've also seen enough to know that I feel very good about him heading into next year. As for Sinnott, I thought when they drafted him, he was the long-term tight end at the position Ertz plays. But as things have materialized, I don't know that he is. He's playing a very different position than what Ertz is playing, and he is getting time on the field. So I'm not sitting Ertz for him because I don't think he's the heir apparent at that position right now any longer.
I would agree with you wholeheartedly on that. And I think with McGee's playing a lot. Where he's not playing, the only thing the only area where I'd say play him more is if they said, okay, he's the guy because that dude is playing pretty well. So if you say, okay, but he's the Mike linebacker for the future, that's an area where I say, okay, you got 2 games left. Do you go to Bobby like we're gonna rotate him in here at times because we need to see? I get that, but he is playing a lot, and part of the reason maybe he's playing well is because it doesn't have that responsibility at this point. So there are a lot of ways to develop a guy. It's not just throw him in there. So it's probably a good thing for him to be in there with the Bobby Wagner. How does he run the huddle? How does he do this? How does he communicate during the game? As far as Sinnott goes, he's played enough that if they felt like he warranted more time, he would get more time. And his best attribute so far has been blocking. As a pass catcher, I think he's not going to be Zach Ertz at all. They're just very different style of pass catchers. He would be more of a play action, bootleg kind of receiver for them, right? And then
I like this kind of role where they kind of turn him into a hunter, where they kind of bring him across the line of scrimmage and he's looking to throw a block. He's a very willing participant to do it. It is that Juszczyk type of role where, they could throw the ball to him a few times. He can catch it. But will he become a true pass receiving tight end? I think that was the hope when they first drafted him. As things have gone through the first year and a half, I don't personally see him that way anymore. Doesn't mean he doesn't have a role on the team. I just don't see him that way. So I'm not playing Ertz to play him because that actually just doesn't add up to me.
Right. And I think there's a couple other guys that people bring up. Yankov is more athletic. He's a good athlete. So, and he's helping them on special teams. Again, the other thing is when people say you want to see if they're part of their future, these guys have a pretty good idea of what these guys can do. And I'd say that's not just, we don't see them in games. You guys aren't seeing them in games, but they're with them in practice. They're with them in the meeting rooms. They know what they know and what they can do. sometimes maybe you overlook something in a guy. You're like, yeah, maybe they can rise up and maybe surprise you, but it doesn't happen a ton. So I think like they have a good idea of that. And somebody also brought up Johnny Newton. He is playing. And if you're not seeing him, he's playing. So, I don't know, like you're not going to play him ahead of, you're not playing him ahead of Deron Payne or Kinlaw.
No, again, what is Payne's future? I don't know. We could talk about that because of his number and what the future looks like. And, we all know that this is a big year for him and a decision will come, not unlike with John Allen. A decision will come because of his contractual situation and they'll make a choice. But I wouldn't sit him to play Newton more for one main reason. And it's kind of the same thing that I would say about Sinnott and Ertz. Newton has not proven to be a very good run stopper at this point.
Right.
So I'm not sure, Newton at this point to me is someone who I think could be a very effective defensive tackle on true pass downs. But as a run plugger, first and second down defensive tackle, I need to see a lot more. And so again, similarly, I would kind of say at this point, I don't see him as an heir apparent replacement. And maybe when he was drafted, maybe they thought that way. But as things have gone so far, I'm not sure I see him that way. It doesn't mean he can't develop into this. I just don't see that. So these two things, like Sinnott to Ertz, Newton to Payne, to me are not apples to apples, even though they have the same letters next to their name as what position they play.
And I got another thought on that. But first, Commanders fans, this is for you. Level up with the brand new AAA Commanders MVP membership. You'll receive all the benefits of AAA, such as 24/7 roadside assistance, plus chances to win game tickets, access to exclusive team events and experiences, along with 15% off Commanders gear at the online pro shop. Already a AAA member? Add the Commanders MVP membership for free. Head to AAA.com/Commanders to upgrade or join the squad and put your fandom in drive. Bram, I agree with you on Newton. Like he's not like when they're stopping the run, a lot of it is it's Payne, it's Kinlaw, it's Goldman. Newton had a couple plays the other night where I felt like I saw the quickness a little bit more that you want to see. Sometimes I'm not, and this is something he talked about early in the year, is the get off. They felt like it was getting better. And then some games it's a little bit slow, right? And I don't think it's a matter of quickness. I think it's a matter of anticipation sometimes, or just maybe watching the ball and getting it off a little bit quicker. But he is playing, and you're not going to play him ahead of Payne. You're not playing ahead of Kinlaw. Those guys deserve the time. Payne made multiple plays the other night, so you're not going to take him out again. That it just doesn't send the right message either. And because at some point, like you think Bobby Wagner wants to sit there, wait a minute, you want to develop guys? I'm still trying to win, even though you're not going anywhere. We know that, but there's still something. And when the coaching staff is coming back, you need to consider those aspects. And I think the other thing, last thing on that too, Bram, this goes back to, for people who are rooting for losses in every game, again, it exposes way more than you want exposed, and it leaves them way more vulnerable than you want. And when you talk to players, when you talk to coaches, in April, I'm sure Adam Peters will be like, oh, okay, hey, I've been the 5th pick, whatever. But right now, like and I was talking to somebody in the organization about this late last week, that, if you go like that, like, and their point was too, like they were concerned, like where would the locker room be going into next season? What's the confidence level they have in this coaching staff? And if one thing starts to go wrong early, does it detonate the whole situation? And that's the concern. So it's why you have to weigh like, oh boy, well, you got the 5th pick versus you finished strong, whatever that means. It doesn't mean winning every game, but if you win 2 or 3 more, you get the 11th pick, like it's a healthier situation going into next year. I
agree. You want this one? How about this one? What do you think the plan is with Brandon Coleman right now?
Well, listen, right now, here's the interesting thing about him. And I talked to him about this earlier in the year. So this is why I wouldn't give up on him, but I'd also bring back Chris Paul for sure. Coleman he missed a month this summer. And when I was talking to him about like after his benching, I talked to him a couple weeks after the benching, and his point was that month really cost him. Like he did not get comfortable. He was not comfortable at guard to the point he needed to be when the season began. And I think like that month, so now you get a full year of him at that position. So right now he's a depth piece, because if Paul comes back, that's what he is. But knowing how the staff is, if Coleman goes in there and beats him out in the summertime, they probably put him back in there. So, but right now it'd be a swing. You see him in the jumbo packages. He can also play guard. So that to me is what his role would be right now. If you look ahead to next year, if Chris Paul is back, then that's how I would see it, Bram.
Yeah, I think one, I love him in this jumbo package role. Most of the time when teams bring a player like that out, they can't move like this guy can move.
Right.
So I actually think, one, they could be creative with him because he can really move. Two, I agree with you. Come next year, him competing to win a job as the starting left guard would not surprise me whatsoever. No. And he's got 2 years left on his rookie contract. We're not moving away from him. At worst,
good to have young depth.
Who's fighting to get back on the field. And depending on what happens with Chris Paul, might be the starter, starting next year, because Chris Paul is a free agent. So we don't know what's going to happen there.
Right. And listen, you want the offensive line is probably the single strongest area on this team.
Yep.
I mean, I'm going to put quarterback aside, but single strongest area. And part of that will be because of the depth, and that would be Coleman, right? And then depending what do they do with Wiley and Allegretti. But you have depth there, quality depth. You don't F with that. And so I think, so the plan, obviously bring him back, because why wouldn't you? And then see where it goes. And again, and somebody asked about Chris Paul's agent, what a contract. I don't know yet. I mean, we're not talking about having a Pro Bowl year, but we are talking about a guy who's been who's done a nice job this year, next to a guy who's done a fantastic job in Tunsil. But yeah, this is the thing that and you brought this up in the silver linings part, but going into the season, I felt like the second half of the year, the line would be at its best, because you get Cosme back, you give him a few weeks to get up there. Then you have a rookie right tackle, let him get some time to play better, right? Or to learn. And that it would be a good finish. Now, I thought the team would be a little bit better and they could power them through the playoffs. Kind of missed on that one. But I think you can feel good about that group going into next year, regardless of what happens the next 5 weeks.
This is another major reason why I want them to keep playing hard and playing their guys. I want to see what this offense could look like. They acquired Deebo Samuel and Laramie Tunsil and drafted Josh Connerly to try to put together what might be a top 5 offense. Right. We haven't gotten a look at it because of a variety of different reasons. Cosme now has gotten his sea legs back. He's starting to look like himself again. Connerly, at the beginning of the season, I felt like you better park John Bates next to him because he's in trouble. And now I don't feel that way at all. He feels a lot more entrenched. Tunsil's been terrific. Chris Paul has settled in. Biotish is extremely solid. The offensive line is what I'd hoped it would be, a strength. And I agree with you. I thought it would take until midseason or later for it to kind of galvanize itself. And we're there. So I want to see what this offense looks like. And that's where I think we're going to see it, is because that defense they faced is a Super Bowl defense. They ran 85 plays against them, which is an enormous amount of plays in a game. That should be a death sentence against a team like that. It wasn't. Connerly was terrific. Tunsil was terrific. They had over 400 yards of offense. There are only 1 or 2 teams that have done that against them this year. And they were, a very nice play by Nick Benito away from winning against them with their backup quarterback. I'm sorry. I want to see more of this now. I really do. I know the draft people want to see draft position. I don't. I want to see the team that I thought we were going to get in the summer at the latter half of the season. And if that means taking out someone like the Eagles or the Cowboys and knocking them out of the playoffs at the end of the season, let's go. I'd like to see that.
Yeah. And there's nothing, I don't think there's anything bad, because here's the other thing. You don't even know who's in the draft at this point. You obviously have an idea of certain things, but the quarterbacks are going to play a lot with this, and they don't need a quarterback. And you don't know, I don't know that any of these quarterbacks are going to be worth trading up for, to be honest. So you can't count on that. So, and there's certain positions where the draft is strong, which is where they need corners, receivers, defensive ends. So just understand that it's not the worst thing in the world to actually see them finish well. But again, there's different definitions of that too. And it could be hey, go, what do they got? 5 games left, go 2 and 3, and then, but look, really good in the other 3. Okay. that's not too bad either. I also think, Bram, and I want to get one more thing on Jaden Daniels, but I want to read this one first. Again, Commanders fans, this is for you. Level up with the brand new AAA Commanders MVP membership. You'll receive all the benefits of AAA, such as 24/7 roadside assistance, plus chances to win game tickets, access to exclusive team events and experiences, along with 15% off Commanders gear at the online pro shop. Already a AAA member, add the Commanders MVP membership for free. Head to AAA.com/Commanders to upgrade or join the squad and put your fandom in drive. So with Jaden coming back at some point, and we don't know yet if he's going to be back this week. I think last week it felt like there was at least some optimism that it would be this week. And now it's like, I think it's still a wait and see how the elbow progresses and when he's cleared for contact, et cetera. But I also wonder with him coming back, like how many games it will take him to find a rhythm. That's why it's good if he can have 5 games or even 4 games, because like you come back after a long absence. Against Seattle, we saw the Kurt Warner stuff and, there's some context missing, but some of that too, I think, is just being out of rhythm because you haven't played. And I think that's why it's a good thing for him if he can have an elongated stretch to build that up and to finish good for him and get that pick. Because I'm like you, like, what does that pass game look like? What does this offense look like when you have your parts there? Will we see Noah Brown this year? I don't know. But if you do, could you see a, McLaurin, Debo, Trey Burks, Noah Brown? Like now you're getting guys who can really help you win games and look good, Bram?
Yeah, I want to see it. I think they've really happened on something with Burks. He brings an element that they really haven't had. I was like thinking about this like years and years and years. McLaurin's put up numbers after numbers, and we've always talked about like what quarterback was he playing with until last year. And then you could also say, what was his opposite receiver all those years? And here is, a high level talent, that. And man, I don't know. I think you probably got a chance to talk to him in the locker room after the game the other night. They gave him to us for the post game show, and I'm telling you, like you could feel the emotion in him making a play like that. It's been a long road for him, to be a first round pick, to have to be drafted to replace AJ Brown, to have all the injuries and devastating ones, ACL, broken collarbone, all these things. And it really it was nice. And this one guy just put up, being honest, I'm still picking Tate if he's there. Oh, so am I.
Man, here, I've watched the guy and it's not just because of this, it's because I've watched the guy for a couple of years now. He's terrific.
Same.
And here's the other thing. So I would definitely pick him as well. I think with Trey Burks, there's a couple of things, Bram. One, I talked to him several weeks ago and I played it on the podcast in my 5 thoughts one time. And he's just really grounded. And it's, I even asked him about proving others, proving something. He's like, you're trying to prove yourself right. You know what I mean? Like it's that instead of having negative, drive, it's a positive filled I want to prove myself right because I believe I can play. And he was very grounded and very honest about like what went on. And even somebody asked him about the journey and he's like, what happened in Tennessee, was it just about health? He goes, no, it's just like, basically, he's very religious. So his thing was, God put me through this to make me better player, better man. So, but I think he believes that very much. The other part with it too, in Tennessee, he had to be the guy. That's what he was drafted to be. Here, he's a complimentary guy. Like if you're a quality 3rd or 4th guy, that's really good for him here, right? Like if you go out and let's say they get Carnell Tate or another receiver. So now you have McLaurin and that player. Don't know what's going to happen with Debo, how expensive it will be. But if Burks is your 3rd or 4th guy, you're in pretty good shape. And I think it allows him to play a little bit. It allows him to fill a specific role because he's not a guy that's just going to get you don't see him get wide open a lot, right? But he makes tough contested catches. And it's nice to have another guy on the roster who can do that. And, so he's a good complementary piece. And that's what he has to be. And I think there's nothing wrong with that because you can win with guys like that. So, I mean, and it's also, Bram, like this is one of the things too. And this is because we're in the locker room. You get to talk to guys and get to know guys a little bit. But it's, it's okay to say like, it's nice to see a guy like that get rewarded sometimes because of what he's been through. And, it's like we all know what, if a player doesn't live up to potential, what they go through. And sometimes it's their own doing. Sometimes they don't put the work in and all that, but you have all these injuries. And it's like, it's hard to control that. And then you go through all this stuff to get back and you make some plays. Like it's nice to feel good about something, right? I think Drake Jackson is another guy that curious to see, like, when does he get his chance to get out there and what can he do when he does? So, I think there's a lot of good stories in the NFL that are guys like that who just, you get knocked down and then how do you respond? Can you get back up?
Yep. I agree.
There you go, Bram. Based on, I think that's all I've got to say. I don't know. We kind of covered all the bases, Bram. So anyways, folks, appreciate everybody tuning in. Bram, always enjoy the conversation on these shows. I'll be back on Wednesday night, Thursday morning with another episode. And then for you Gold members, I'll be doing the private Zoom on Thursday night. So there you go, 7:30 Eastern time Thursday. If you want to become a club member, Empire Media, go to the Empire Media YouTube page. You see the word join. Click on that. Go from there. I appreciate everybody tuning in. I'll talk to you next time.